Captain Elena Vasquez had dreamed of this moment her entire life, standing on an alien space station, meeting other species from across the galaxy, making history as the commander of the first human ship to reach the galactic core. She had not dreamed of the chains. The metal bands around her wrists were cold and heavy. They glowed with a soft blue light that told her they were more than simple restraints. Some kind of energy field kept her locked in place. Around her, her crew of 15 humans stood in similar bindings. Commander Jackson Chen was to her left. Lieutenant Sarah Kim was to her right. Behind her, she could hear engineer Marcus Webb breathing slowly, trying to stay calm. They were in a massive chamber made of white stone and floating crystals. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top. 12 enormous thrones sat in a half-circle before them, and on each throne sat a creature unlike anything Elena had ever imagined. One was made entirely of crystal, standing nearly 4 meters tall. Another looked like a giant insect with 7 legs and compound eyes that reflected light like diamonds. A third appeared to be made of living light, constantly shifting between colors. There were beings of gas, beings of metal, beings that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. These were the Apex Council, the rulers of the Milky Way galaxy. They had controlled thousands of star systems for over 300,000 years. Their technology was so advanced it looked like magic. Their fleets numbered in the millions. And they were looking at the humans like scientists looked at bacteria. The crystal being rose from its throne. Its voice sounded like glaciers grinding against mountains. "I am Arbiter Thexuar. You have entered collective space without permission. You have traveled to the sacred core without invitation. Explain yourselves." Elena straightened her back despite the chains. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the interstellar ship Horizon. We are explorers from Earth, the third planet of the Sol system. We came in peace to make contact with other intelligent life." Peace. The word echoed strangely from Thexuar's crystal form. "All species claim peace when they are weak. We shall see what you truly are." The giant insect being leaned forward. Its voice clicked and buzzed, but somehow Elena understood every word. "You will undergo the rite of classification. All new species must be examined, catalogued, assessed." "What does that mean?" Elena asked. "A simple blood test," Thexuar answered. "Your genetic material will be analyzed by the Sphere of Origins. It will tell us everything we need to know about your species, your history, your capabilities, your threat level." Elena glanced at Chen. He gave her a tiny nod. They had no choice. The Council's power was absolute here. Fighting was not an option. The Horizon had exactly 12 crew members and basic defensive weapons. The station around them probably held enough firepower to destroy a planet. "We will cooperate," Elena said. "A wise choice." Thexuar descended from its throne and approached Elena. In its crystalline hand, it held a small device that looked like a floating silver sphere with a thin needle extending from one side. The needle was not made of metal. It seemed to be made of solid light. "This will not cause permanent damage," Thexuar said. It did not say it would not hurt. The needle pierced Elena's arm. She felt a cold sensation spreading through her veins, followed by a sharp sting. A small amount of her blood floated up from the wound, suspended in a tiny bubble of energy. The bubble drifted toward the center of the chamber where a much larger sphere waited. This sphere was ancient. Elena could feel its age somehow, as if time itself bent around it. The council members called it the Sphere of Origins. It had been built by beings so old that even the council did not know their names. For 300,000 years, it had analyzed every species that entered collective space. It had never made a mistake. It had never failed. Elena's blood entered the sphere. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the sphere began to scream. The sound was like nothing Elena had ever heard. It was not just loud, it was wrong. It was the sound of a machine experiencing something it was never designed to process. The crystals in the ceiling shattered. The council members stumbled back from their thrones. The being made of light flickered violently. "What is happening?" the insect being demanded. "I do not know," Thexwar replied. Its voice held something Elena had never expected to hear from such a powerful being. Fear. Text began appearing in the air, not on screens or displays, but floating in space itself, burning with golden light. The words were in a language Elena did not recognize, but somehow she understood them perfectly. Genetic analysis complete species. Designation, Homo sapiens, origin world, Sol 3. Local name, Earth. Elena felt a small surge of pride. Her planet had a name now, written in the records of a galactic civilization. Then more text appeared. Threat level. Calculating. The sphere continued to scream. The sound grew higher, more desperate. Elena saw cracks forming in its ancient surface. Whatever it had found in her blood, it was struggling to process it. Threat level. Unlimited. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the sphere stopped screaming. Every being in the room, human and alien alike, stared at those two words floating in the air. Unlimited. "That is not possible," said the being made of gas. Its voice was like wind through caves. "The highest threat level ever recorded was level 7, the Vorthan hegemony. We destroyed them 40,000 years ago to protect the galaxy." "The sphere does not make errors," Thexwar said. Its crystal body was trembling. "It was built by the precursors themselves. It has analyzed over 100,000 species. It has never—" More text appeared. "Warning, apex predator genome detected warning. Unique adaptation found. Persistence, hunting warning. Extreme chemical response system. Adrenaline warning. Anomalous pattern recognition capabilities. Warning, pack bonding extends to non-species members. Warning, comprehensive toxin resistance. Warning, exceptional trauma recovery. Warning, spite-based motivation system, no equivalent on file." Elena read each warning as it appeared. Some of them made her smile, others made her frown in confusion. Spite-based motivation system, what did that even mean? The oldest member of the council, a massive being with 7 legs and eyes that had seen empires rise and fall, spoke for the first time. Its voice was ancient and heavy with authority. "Explain these warnings," High Arbiter Genvok commanded. "What is a persistence predator? What is spite-based motivation?" The sphere began to answer, and Elena realized that everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe was about to change. The Apex Council demanded a blood exam. The DNA said, "Owner, Earth, threat level, unlimited." The sphere of origins floated in the center of the chamber, cracks spreading across its ancient surface. It had analyzed over 100,000 species across 300,000 years. It had seen predators and prey, hive minds and individuals, creatures of flesh and beings of energy. It had never seen anything like humans. High Arbiter Genvok repeated his command. "Explain these warnings. Start with persistence hunting." The sphere's voice filled the chamber. It sounded tired, almost broken. "Persistence hunting, a method of predation unique to Homo sapiens. Subject species does not rely on speed or strength to catch prey. Instead, they follow their target for hours, sometimes days. They do not stop. They do not rest. They simply keep moving until their prey collapses from exhaustion." Elena remembered learning about this in school. Her ancestors on the African plains had hunted animals by simply walking after them until the animals could not run anymore. It had seemed like a strange fact at the time. Now, watching 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy stare at her with something like horror, it felt different. "They run their prey to death," the gas being whispered. "They just Follow until it dies? Correct. No other known species possesses this adaptation. Subject species can maintain movement for periods exceeding 20 hours without rest. The insect being made a clicking sound that Elena realized was nervous laughter. 20 hours? That is impossible. The body would fail. The muscles would tear. Subject species has developed cooling systems and energy storage that prevent such failure. They sweat. They consume complex carbohydrates. They keep moving. HFY stepped closer to the sphere. And the spite-based motivation? What does that mean? The sphere was quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, its voice held something that sounded almost like fear. Spite, an emotional response in which subject species expends resources, exceeding the value of any potential gain, specifically to cause harm or discomfort to those who have wronged them. Give us an example, Genvok demanded. Documented case. A human male spent 3 years and significant financial resources to legally acquire land next to an enemy's home. He then constructed a large wall blocking the enemy's view. The wall had no other purpose. The cost exceeded the value of the enemy's entire property. When asked why, the human said it was worth it to see his face. Silence filled the chamber. Subject species has a saying, the sphere continued. Cut off the nose to spite the face, meaning they will harm themselves if it means harming an enemy more. That is insane, said the light being. No rational species would do such a thing. Subject. Species does not always prioritize rationality. They prioritize emotional satisfaction. More text appeared in the air. Additional analysis. Subject species has survived 5 mass extinction events on their homeworld. Subject species has weaponized nuclear fission, chemical compounds, biological agents, kinetic impact, psychological manipulation, sound, light, and themselves. Elena watched her crew exchange glances. Some of them looked proud. Others looked worried about how the council would react. Subject species keeps apex predators as companions and refers to them as good boys. Commander Chen actually laughed at that one. He thought of his German shepherd back on Earth, a dog bred from wolves that could tear out a man's throat, and how he called her sweet baby girl. Subject species deliberately consumes poison for recreational purposes. What poison? The insect being demanded. Ethanol, capsaicin, caffeine, nicotine. Subject species has consumed these substances for thousands of years despite knowing they cause damage to their bodies. Elena thought about the coffee she had drunk that morning, the spicy food she loved, the wine she drank on special occasions. She had never thought of them as poisons. The capsaicin, the gas being said. I have encountered that compound. It is a chemical weapon produced by plants to prevent consumption. It causes pain and tissue damage. Correct. Subject species calls it spicy food. They add it to meals for pleasure. They have competitions to see who can consume the most. They eat pain for fun, HFY translated. Its crystal body flickered with colors that Elena could not interpret. They poison themselves recreationally. They keep predators as pets. They pursue prey until it dies of exhaustion, and they will destroy themselves to hurt their enemies. Additional warning. Subject species concept of acceptable losses includes themselves high arbiter. Genvok leaned back in his throne. His ancient eyes studied the humans with new intensity. Show us their history, their wars. The sphere projected images into the air. Elena watched her own species' past unfold before the council. Wars that killed millions, bombs that leveled cities, soldiers who threw themselves onto explosives to save their companions. Civilians who refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. Battle of Thermopylae. 300 warriors held a defensive position against an army of over 100,000. All 300 died. They became heroes in subject species culture. They celebrate the ones who lost? The light being asked. Correct. Subject species values defiance over survival. They honor those who fight impossible odds. They tell stories of these defeats for thousands of years. World War II. Subject species dropped nuclear weapons on their own planet, twice. The war continued for several days afterward. They used nuclear weapons on themselves and kept fighting? The gas being sounded horrified. Subject species has never successfully surrendered as a whole. Individual nations surrender, individual groups surrender. The species itself has never stopped fighting. Elena felt something strange stirring in her chest. Pride, maybe, or fear. She was not sure which. The sphere's final warning appeared. Conclusion. Homo sapiens cannot be predicted. They cannot be contained. They form emotional bonds with anything, including enemies, machines, and abstract concepts. They will die for these bonds. They will kill for these bonds. Threat assessment. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. If engagement is required, ensure complete elimination. Partial measures will result in retribution. Time frame for retribution. Unlimited. Subject. Species has documented cases of maintaining grudges for over 1,000 years. High Arbiter. Genvok rose from his throne. His 7 legs carried him down from the platform until he stood directly before Elena. He was massive, towering over her small human form. His eyes had watched civilizations turn to dust. His decisions had shaped the galaxy for longer than humanity had existed. Captain Vasquez, he said, do you understand what the sphere has told us? Elena met his gaze without flinching. It told you what we are. It told us that you are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered, more dangerous than the Vorthon hegemony, whom we destroyed to protect the galaxy, more dangerous than the Silence Plague, which consumed 300 worlds before we stopped it. And yet here I stand, Elena said, in chains, with 14 of my crew, on a station that could destroy our entire fleet with a single shot. Yes, Genvok agreed. The question before this council is simple. What do we do with you? The chamber fell silent again. Elena could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on everyone present. Her crew, the council, the future of humanity itself. Finally, Genvok spoke again. Take them to holding, comfortable holding. We must deliberate. As guards led Elena and her crew from the chamber, she heard Thexuar speak one last time. The sphere has never been wrong, not once in 300,000 years. I know, Genvok replied. That is what frightens me. The Apex Council demanded a blood exam. The DNA said, Owner Earth, threat level unlimited. The holding cell was nicer than Elena's quarters on the horizon. That worried her more than chains would have. The room had soft beds, clean water, and food that actually tasted good. There was a window showing the stars outside, and the temperature was perfect for human comfort. Someone had done research. Someone was being very careful. Commander Chen sat beside her on one of the beds. They're either going to kill us or offer us something big. No middle ground. I know. The food is too good. The beds are too soft. They're either fattening us up for slaughter or trying to make a good impression. Lieutenant Kim was pacing near the window. The sphere called us the most dangerous species they've ever seen. They destroyed the last species that got a level 7 rating. We got unlimited. We also have 47 ships in our entire fleet, Elena reminded her. They have millions. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. Then why keep us comfortable? Elena thought about it. She thought about everything the sphere had said. About persistence hunting and spite and grudges that lasted 1,000 years. Because they're smart, she said finally. And they're scared. They know that if they hurt us, we'll find a way to hurt them back. Even if it takes centuries. Even if it costs us everything. 3 days passed. The crew was not mistreated. They were given food, water, exercise time, and even entertainment. But they were not allowed to contact Earth. They were not told what was happening. They simply waited. On the 4th day, Elena was taken from the cell alone. She expected to be brought back to the great chamber with the 12 thrones. Instead, she was led to a smaller room with comfortable seats and soft lighting. A single alien waited for her there. This one was different from the council members. It was smaller, softer, covered in something like fur that shifted colors as it moved. It floated on a cushion of energy rather than walking. "Captain Vasquez," it said. Its voice was gentle, almost musical. "I am Counselor Meridian. I specialize in relations between species. Please, sit." Elena sat. "Am I being executed?" "No." Meridian made a sound that might have been a laugh, though that option was discussed at length. "How length?" 3 days. The Council has not debated so long over any decision in 40,000 years. Meridian settled more comfortably on its floating cushion. "You have caused quite a problem for us, Captain." "By existing? By being exactly what the sphere said you are? We have dealt with dangerous species before. We have destroyed some. We have contained others. We have made alliances with a few. But we have never encountered a species like yours. Because of our threat level? Because your threat level makes no sense." Meridian's fur shifted to a deeper color. "Let me explain. Threat levels are based on power, military strength, technology, resources. By those measures, humanity should be level 2 at most. You have fewer than 50 starships. Your weapons are primitive. Your territory is a single solar system. Then why unlimited? Because the sphere does not only measure what you are, it measures what you could become, what you would become if threatened." Meridian leaned forward. "Every other species in the galaxy has a breaking point, a level of damage at which they surrender, retreat, or accept defeat. Even the Vorthon hegemony, the most warlike species we ever encountered, had such limits. And humans don't? The sphere could not find one. It searched your entire genetic history, your cultural records, your psychological patterns. It found no point at which humanity collectively surrenders. Individual humans surrender. Nations surrender. But the species as a whole?" Meridian shook its head. "Never. Not once in your entire history." Elena thought about that. She thought about every war humanity had ever fought, every disaster they had survived, every time someone had said, "This is the end," and been wrong. "We're stubborn," she said. "You are impossible," Meridian corrected. "You walked on your moon before you had reliable computers. You split the atom before you understood genetics. You keep creatures that could kill you as pets and trust them with your children. You consume poison for pleasure and call it culture." "Is this going somewhere?" "Yes, it's going to an offer." Meridian produced a small device that projected text into the air. "The Council has voted. It was not unanimous. In fact, it was the most divided vote in our history. But a decision has been reached." Elena read the floating text slowly. "Proposal. Full membership in the Galactic Collective for Species, Homo sapiens, immediate seat on the Outer Council path to Apex Council, within standard advancement period, full access to collective technology, full access to trade routes and diplomatic channels, no restrictions on expansion within designated territories." "This is everything we hoped for," Elena said. "This is more than we hoped for. What's the catch?" "No catch. Only an understanding." "What understanding?" Meridian's fur turned a color Elena had not seen before. Darker, serious. "We are not offering this because we want you as partners. We are not offering this because we believe in friendship between species. We are offering this because the alternative is war, and we are not certain we would win. You have millions of ships. We have 47. today. But your species reached interstellar travel in less than a century. You reached the galactic core in less than 2 generations. Your rate of advancement is unprecedented. In 100 years, what will you have? In 1,000? Elena was quiet. More importantly, Meridian continued, we learned what happens when your species feels threatened. We studied your history, Captain. We saw what you did to each other, the weapons you built, the wars you fought, the monuments you erected to those who died fighting impossible odds. Thermopylae? Yes, and the Alamo, and Masada, and 100 other places where your people chose death over surrender and called it glory. Meridian shuddered visibly. You do not fight to win, Captain. You fight to make the enemy suffer. Even if you lose, even if you die, you make certain they pay for every victory in blood. We call it making them earn it. We call it terrifying. Elena stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the station stretching in all directions. Thousands of ships moved around it like fish around a reef. The power of the collective was on full display. Half the council voted to destroy us, didn't they? She asked. Yes. And the other half? The other half pointed out that such an attempt might fail, and that even if it succeeded, there was no guarantee they would find every human colony, every hidden ship, every survivor, and that those survivors would not stop until they had extracted revenge. Meridian paused. Your species has a concept we have never encountered before. You call it generational grudges, hatreds passed down from parent to child, conflicts that last longer than individual lifetimes. The Hatfields and McCoys, Elena murmured. We read about them, 2 families that fought for over a century. They forgot why they were fighting. They kept fighting anyway. Meridian rose from its cushion. Can you imagine what humanity would do if we destroyed your homeworld? Killed your families? Your children? Elena could imagine it. She could imagine it very clearly. You would never stop hunting us, Meridian said. Not in 1,000 years, not in 10,000. You would find ways we cannot predict. You would attack from directions we cannot guard. You would make alliances with our enemies. You would poison our food, corrupt our systems, destroy our infrastructure piece by piece until nothing remained. Yes, Elena agreed. We would. That is why we offer friendship instead of war, because we are wise enough to know what you are. Elena turned from the window. And what happens if we accept? What guarantee do we have that this isn't a trap? Meridian's fur shifted again. This time the color looked almost sad. None. You will have to trust us. Just as we are trusting that you will not betray this alliance. And if you do betray us? Meridian did not answer. It did not need to. They both knew what would happen. Elena looked at the floating text again. Full membership. Full access. A path to real power in the galaxy. Everything humanity had dreamed of when they first looked at the stars. All because they were too stubborn to know when to quit. I need to speak with my crew, she said. Of course. Take whatever time you need. The Council has waited 40,000 years for a decision this important. They can wait a few more days. As Elena was led back to her crew, she thought about what Meridian had said. About fear and wisdom and the difference between them. She was beginning to think they might be the same thing. The Apex Council demanded a blood exam. The DNA said, Owner, Earth, threat level, unlimited. Elena told her crew everything. They sat in the holding room, which no one called a cell anymore, and listened as she explained Meridian's offer. Full membership, full access. A seat at the table with the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, and the reason behind it all. So they're scared of us, Lieutenant Kim said when Elena finished. They're scared of what we might become, what we might do if they tried to destroy us. Commander Chen was quiet for a long moment. My grandfather fought in the Pacific War. When the enemy captured his friends, they were tortured for weeks. When his unit finally freed them, they found out one of them had survived by memorizing the face of every guard who hurt them. He spent 40 years tracking those guards down. Did he find them? Engineer Webb asked. Every single one. The crew exchanged glances. There was no shock on their faces, no horror, just understanding. They all had similar stories. Grandparents who never forgot a betrayal, parents who settled scores decades after the original offense, uncles and aunts who carried grudges to their graves and passed them on to their children. "They're not wrong about us," Elena said. "That's what makes this so strange. Everything the sphere said was true. We are exactly what it described, persistence hunters, spite-driven, bonded to anything we decide to love, and absolutely destructive to anything we decide to hate. The question is whether they're being honest about the offer," Chen said, "or whether this is a trap. If it's a trap, we're already caught. We're on their station, surrounded by their fleet, with no way to contact Earth." Elena leaned against the wall. "The only leverage we have is the same thing that scared them in the first place. They know that if they betray us, we'll make them pay. Maybe not today, maybe not in our lifetimes, but eventually. So what do? Elena had been thinking about that for hours. She had considered every angle, every possibility, every way this could go wrong, and she kept coming back to the same conclusion. "We accept." She let the words hang in the air. Her crew waited for her to continue. "The collective has technology we need, resources we need, knowledge we need. If we want humanity to survive long-term, not just on Earth, but across the stars, we need what they're offering. And if they're lying, then they've given us the perfect opportunity. We'll be inside their systems, learning their technology, meeting their allies and enemies, making connections across the galaxy." Elena smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "If this is a trap, we'll turn it into an opportunity. If they try to destroy us, we'll make sure we're too embedded in their civilization to remove without destroying themselves." "Like a virus," Kim said. "Like family," Elena corrected. "We're going to make friends, real friends. We're going to become so useful, so connected, so essential to the collective that getting rid of us would cost more than keeping us around. And if that fails, then we do what humans have always done. We survive, we remember, and we get even." The next day, Elena was brought before the full council again. This time there were no chains. She walked freely into the great chamber, her crew behind her, and faced the 12 ancient beings on their thrones. The sphere of origins still floated in the center of the room, cracks visible across its surface. High Arbiter Genvok spoke first. "Captain Vasquez, you have had time to consider our offer. What is your answer?" "Before I answer, I have a question." The council stirred. Apparently, questions were not common in this chamber. "Speak," Genvok said. "Counselor Meridian told me that half of you voted to destroy humanity, that you saw us as a threat that needed to be eliminated before we became too strong." Elena looked from throne to throne, meeting each alien gaze without fear. "I want to know which half." Silence fell over the chamber. "That information is traditionally kept confidential," Thexuar said. "I don't care about your traditions. I care about knowing who looked at my species and decided we should be exterminated." For a long moment, no one moved. Then High Arbiter Genvok did something unexpected. He laughed. The sound was strange coming from such an ancient creature, like rocks tumbling down a mountainside, but warmer somehow, almost appreciative. "You understand politics," he said. "You want to know your enemies. I want to know where I stand. If we join your collective, I need to know who will be working against us." "Very well." Genvok gestured to his right. "Admiral Vrex of the Dominion, Elder Krasik of the Stone Mines, Sage Thulm of the Void Walkers, Hierophant Zelix of the Hive Eternal, Archon Drell of the Photonic Collective, and Warden Knox of the Silent Ones. These 6 voted for your destruction. Elena studied each of them carefully. She would remember their names, their faces, their positions in the collective hierarchy. And the others? Myself, Arbiter Thexuar, Counselor Meridian, though she does not sit on this council, Dreamweaver Kithsa, Sage Illumin, Prime Voice Haran. Genvok's ancient eyes gleamed. We voted for alliance, not because we trust you, not because we like you, but because we believe that making enemies of humanity would be the greatest mistake in our collective's history. Even though we have 47 ships, and you have millions, the Vorthon hegemony had 10,000 ships when we destroyed them. We lost 200,000 ships doing it. They never stopped fighting, never surrendered. We had to hunt down every last ship, every colony, every station. Genvok paused. Your species would be worse. We saw the numbers. We saw the projections. If we attacked Earth tomorrow, we could destroy it within hours, and then we would spend the next 10,000 years paying for it. Admiral Vrex spoke from his throne. His voice was like grinding metal. We should still destroy them, now, before they grow stronger. And spend 10,000 years looking over our shoulder, waiting for the survivors to strike? Sage Illumin flickered with light. I have studied their history. They bombed their own cities flat during their wars. They kept fighting. They dropped nuclear weapons on themselves. They kept fighting. What makes you think destroying their homeworld would stop them? Because they would be dead. All of them. Every colony ship, every human on every world we don't know about, every child hidden away on some moon we've never charted. Dreamweaver Kithsa's telepathic voice touched every mind in the chamber. They have been in space for less than a century, and already we cannot track all of them. In another century, we never will. In 1,000 years, they will be everywhere, and they will remember who tried to destroy them. The Admiral fell silent. Elena stepped forward. Here is my answer. Humanity accepts your offer. Full membership, full access, a seat on your outer council. Relief flickered across several alien faces. Others remained hard and hostile. But I want something added to the agreement, Elena continued. A clause, a promise. What promise? That this alliance is real, that you will treat us as equals, not as threats to be managed, that when humans need help, the collective will provide it, and that when the collective needs help, humans will answer. Those terms are acceptable, Genvok said. I'm not finished. Elena's voice hardened. I also want a warning added. A reminder. Put it in your records, your histories, your laws, something that will last as long as your collective exists. What warning? That humanity does not forget, that we do not forgive, that if this alliance is broken, if the collective ever decides to betray us, to enslave us, to destroy us, there will be consequences. Not immediately, maybe not for centuries, but eventually. She looked directly at Admiral Vrex. Make sure your children's children know that. Make sure every species in your collective understands. We will be the best allies you've ever had. We will fight your wars, solve your problems, explore your frontiers. Her smile returned. That cold, dangerous smile that had worried Genvok from the first moment he saw it. But if you turn on us, we will be the last enemy you ever make. The chamber was silent for a long time. Then High Arbiter Genvok raised one of his 7 legs in a gesture Elena had not seen before. Around the chamber, the other council members who had voted for alliance made similar movements. The terms are accepted, Genvok said. Welcome to the collective, Captain Vasquez. Welcome to humanity's new home among the stars. As Elena led her crew from the chamber, she felt something she had not felt since arriving on the station, hope. But she also made sure to memorize Admiral Vrex's face, just in case. The Apex Council demanded a blood exam. The DNA said, Owner, Earth, threat level, unlimited. 50 years had passed since that day in the council chamber. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Nexus Prime, watching ships from 100 worlds pass by. She was 79 years old now, her hair silver, her face lined with age. But her eyes were still sharp, and her back was still straight. A lot had changed in 50 years. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more human instead. They had made friends. It started small. Human engineers worked with alien scientists to solve problems that had frustrated the collective for centuries. Human explorers pushed into regions of space that other species considered too dangerous. Human diplomats negotiated treaties between enemies who had fought for thousands of years. And everywhere humans went, they did what humans had always done. They bonded. The first human-alien friendship that made galactic news was between a young engineer named Marcus Cole and a crystalline being from Thexuar's species. They had worked together on a power system for 3 years and had become so close that the crystalline being asked to be considered part of Marcus's family. When Marcus got married, the alien attended the wedding and wept, or the crystalline equivalent of weeping, during the ceremony. The collective had never seen anything like it. Species cooperated, yes. They traded. They negotiated. But they did not form emotional bonds with beings so different from themselves. Humans did. Within a decade, there were humans living on worlds across the galaxy. Not as invaders, not as conquerors, as neighbors, friends, family. A human doctor on a gas world spent 20 years learning to treat species that breathed ammonia instead of oxygen. A human teacher on an ice planet developed new methods for educating minds that thought in mathematics instead of words. A human soldier gave his life defending an alien colony from pirates, and when his body was returned to Earth, a delegation from that colony came to his funeral and declared him a hero of their people. The collective changed because of humanity. Slowly at first, then faster. The rigid hierarchies that had governed galactic society for hundreds of thousands of years began to soften. Species that had never spoken began to communicate. Conflicts that had lasted millennia were resolved because some stubborn human refused to accept that peace was impossible. And through it all, the warning remained in the collective's records. The reminder that humanity did not forget. It was never needed. Elena walked slowly through the observation deck, nodding to aliens and humans alike. Many of them knew her face. She had become something of a legend over the decades, the first human to stand before the Apex Council, the woman who had looked at the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy and demanded to know which ones had tried to kill her species. These days, she was Admiral Vasquez, the first human on the Apex Council itself. She had earned the position through decades of service, proving over and over that humanity could be trusted with power. Some of the species who had voted for humanity's destruction now counted humans among their closest allies. Admiral Vrex himself had fought beside human soldiers in 3 wars and had changed his opinion about the species he once wanted to exterminate. He would never admit it publicly, but Elena knew he kept a picture of his human tactical advisor on his desk. Others remained suspicious. That was fine. Elena understood suspicion. She had felt it herself 50 years ago when Meridian first offered the alliance. Trust was earned, not given. Today was a special day. The 50th anniversary of Contact Day, when humanity officially joined the collective. Ships from across the galaxy had gathered to celebrate. There would be speeches and ceremonies and probably too much alien food that humans couldn't digest properly. But first, Elena had a visitor. High Arbiter Genvok entered the observation deck slowly. He was ancient beyond measure now, his 7 legs moving carefully, his eyes dimmed by centuries of life. but he was still the same being who had looked at humanity's blood test and felt fear for the first time in 40,000 years. "Admiral Vasquez," he said, "or do you still prefer Captain?" "Admiral is fine. I've gotten used to it." Elena gestured to the seats by the window. "Will you sit with me?" They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the ships pass. "Do you remember what the sphere said about us?" Elena asked eventually. "That day in the chamber?" "I remember every word. I have thought about it every day since." "Threat level, unlimited." That's what it said. That's still what it says, isn't it? In the official records? Genvok made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We ran the analysis again 10 years ago. Some of the younger council members thought the original reading must have been an error. They wanted to update humanity's file." "What happened?" "The sphere gave the same result. Threat level, unlimited. But it added something new." "What did it add?" Genvok was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice held something Elena had rarely heard from him: affection. It said, "Threat is not currently directed at collective. Recommendation, do not change this." Elena laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine, and it made several nearby aliens look up with surprised expressions. Humans laughing still startled some species, even after 50 years. "Smart machine," she said. "It was built by the precursors. They understood something we had forgotten, that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not power, it is potential. And humans have more potential than any species we have ever encountered. Because we're stubborn? Because you refuse to accept limits, any limits. You see a wall and you find a way through it. You see an enemy and you make them into a friend. You see a species that tried to kill you and you forgive them, while making very sure they know what will happen if they try again." Elena thought about that. She thought about the last 50 years. The friends she had made across the galaxy, the enemies she had turned into allies, the universe that had seemed so vast and frightening when she first arrived at Nexus Prime. It did not seem frightening anymore. It felt like home. Below the observation deck, the celebration was beginning. Human children played with young aliens of a dozen species, running and laughing in a language that needed no translation. Human musicians performed alongside light artists from the Photonic Collective. A human chef argued passionately with a Vorthon descendant about the proper way to prepare something called barbecue, the Vorthon descendants. That was something Elena had never expected. When the Collective destroyed the Vorthon hegemony 40,000 years ago, they thought they had eliminated every member of the species. They were wrong. A small colony had survived, hidden on a distant moon, and they had been found by human explorers 30 years ago. The Collective had been terrified. The Vorthans had been even more warlike than their reputation suggested. Everyone expected them to rise up and seek revenge. Instead, the human who found them had sat down with their leaders and talked. For 3 days, she had learned their history, their grievances, their hopes for the future. She had cried with them when they described what had been done to their people, and then she had helped them negotiate a peace with the Collective. The Vorthon descendants now had their own seat on the Outer Council. They were not friends with the species who had nearly destroyed them. That wound was too deep. But they were no longer enemies, and they were friends with humanity. That was what humans did. They found the broken pieces of the galaxy and put them back together. Not because they were kind, though they could be kind, but because they refused to accept that anything was truly hopeless. "Admiral," Genvok said, "may I ask you something I have wondered for 50 years?" "Of course." "When Meridian told you that we feared you, that we offered friendship because we were afraid of what you might do if we didn't, were you offended?" Elena considered the question. She watched her granddaughter, who had traveled all the way from Earth for this celebration, teaching a young crystalline being how to play catch. The being was terrible at it. Her granddaughter was patient. They were both laughing. "No," she said finally. "Fear is just respect with survival instincts. And honestly, it's how we've made most of our friends throughout history. You just have to get past the fear to find out we're actually pretty good company." "And if we hadn't offered friendship?" Elena's eyes went hard for just a moment. The warmth left her face, and Genvox saw a glimpse of the woman who had stood before the council 50 years ago, demanding to know which of them had tried to kill her species. "Then we would have found another way," she said. "We always do." She smiled again, warm and genuine, and the moment passed. But Genvox understood, as the council had understood 50 years ago, that the smile and the steel were not contradictions. They were both human. They were both true. And that was exactly why humanity's file still read, "Species, Homo sapiens origin, Earth threat level, unlimited status, allied recommendation, maintain alliance at all costs." The celebration continued long into the night. Humans and aliens danced together, ate together, told stories together. Somewhere in the crowd, an old admiral with silver hair hugged her granddaughter and thought about how far humanity had come, not through conquest, not through war, but through the thing that had always made humanity strongest, the stubborn, impossible, unlimited ability to make the whole universe feel like home. And in the records of the Apex Council, quietly and without fanfare, a small update was added to humanity's file. Status: family. No one knew who had authorized the change, but no one tried to remove it either. Some things were simply true.